Hi, everyone. Eric Johnnesy from Drive Accounting today. I had a client call me and have a question about closing date passwords and in QuickBooks. So I wanted to take a second to talk about the importance of closing your books and how to use closing date passwords and when you should use them in QuickBooks. So closing your books, unfortunately, this is where we see a lot of people not doing this. They'll generally go through and get the books closed, but then they don't go through and check everything. So closing the books is making certain that every single balance sheet account is reconciled, that you have something to tie it to. You've looked at your bank accounts, you've reconciled them to the banks, you've looked at your accounts receivable, your inventory counts, notes receivable, payable, credit cards, the whole deal. And you've made certain that everything ties. Once you've done that in the balance sheet, then you move over to the profit and loss and you start looking at, do the charges here make sense? Are they consistent? Are they coded to the right accounts? Things like that. So once those are done, then you set a closing date password. And what this does is it makes certain that you don't inadvertently change something from a prior period. So every large company that is looking at reports, as a team, maybe sending these out to people and such, they should always be closing their books at least monthly and setting a closing date password monthly so that these things don't change. Smaller companies generally can get away with doing this annually. So at this point, you've closed everything up in the first month of the year for the prior year, and you're getting ready to send this over to your CPA so he or she can file your taxes. At that point, you set a closing date password so that after you've sent this to your CPA, you don't accidentally change anything because the information that they're filing in your return matches QuickBooks. If you make changes to your QuickBooks after the fact, those expenses may not be written off, or that income that you brought in may not show, and your tax return will be wrong. So everything's closed out. You're going to set a closing date password. We go up here to edit, and we're going to go down to preferences. And we have a lot of different things to choose from, but we're going to start up here in accounting. Now you notice there's two different tabs here. We're going to go ahead and select company preferences. Now with company preferences down here at the bottom, we're going to set a date. So right now, I went ahead and I've checked the box for exclude estimate sales orders and purchase orders from these closing date restrictions. The reason that you do that, imagine you've created an estimate for a customer in December. It's now January and that customer is ready to go, but they have a couple changes. If I don't have this checked, I won't be able to modify that estimate. Now, estimate sales orders and purchase orders are all non-posting. What that means is that you have information in there, but they don't actually affect your accounting. They're not going to affect your profit and loss or your balance sheet. So I usually will check that box so that this way it's not causing a problem, especially if there's a team of people using this. You pick your closing date. In this case, I picked 12/31 of 19, and you set a closing date password. Now, personally, what I use there is my own office phone number. And the reason I do that is, and I've done this for 20 years with clients, I say, hey, the closing date password is my phone number. If you forget what it is, call me. If you remember what it is, call me, because it has saved so many problems, so much time in going back and fixing things. If you're changing something from a prior closed period, we better have a good reason for it. And I'd rather a client take 5 minutes and call me and let's talk through it, rather than having to go through and fix a bunch of stuff and spend hours doing something that could have been resolved in a couple minutes. So if you have questions on that when you run into it, by all means, reach out. So at that point, I'm going to hit OK. And on this sample file, I don't have an admin password set, so I'm going to say, no, I don't want to add and edit users. It brings me back here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. So now, when I pull up a transaction for 2018, and I had one sitting here, let's say that I want to change this date and say, you know what, it was actually on the 22nd. And I try to change this here. I'm going to go ahead and hit save and close. It asks me, just like normal, do I want to record my changes? I say yes, and this is where it brings it up. This modification will affect transactions from closed periods and could affect prior financial reports. Unfortunately, most people they don't read things. They'll click OK, they'll click cancel and move on. But here, it's asking for a password. Now, you can set it to warn you without a password. I'm not a big fan of that. So I always put a password here. And here I'm going to put my phone number, 503-684-5169, and I'm going to hit Okay, and it let me change it. You notice the date's now the 22nd, but it won't let me do that unless I have the password. So make certain you're closing your books, make certain you set a closing date password, and if you need to make changes there, make darn certain you know why. There are some good reasons to do it, and I'm happy to discuss that with questions. So thank you very much. Hope you all have a great day. If you have questions, feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to help. Bye-bye.